Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my thoughts on LEGO Star Wars 2 for the DS. Let's jump right back in with design. So let's talk about the design for a second. I completely understand that the DS, DS Lite, and DSi are limited in their capabilities in terms of processing both graphically and mechanically. However, it's not as limited as you would be led to believe. But for the sake of this comparison, I played on my 3DS. First, we'll take a look at the game itself, and then compare it to other games like Super Mario Bros., The Complete Saga, and a few others. And even though I am playing on the 3DS, I am not going to include 3DS games in these direct comparisons. Now, when I say design, what I'm referring to is the UI design, user interface, character design, and level design, and their graphical quality compared to other games on the DS, and then comparing it to its console counterpart to see how recognizable it is to the source material of the console versions, and the movie itself. Because once again, this is a handheld version of the console game. I've played the original trilogy on the PS2, PC, and GameCube now, and I can confidently say that the design in all three are the exact same. So this will be the control in this comparison. This is the standard that I am expecting from the handheld version of the same game. Are we all good? We all understand? We're on the same page? Good. Let's get to it. So a good user interface isn't something to scoff at when it comes to DS games. My argument is that it only makes sense to have an efficient use of the two screens in a way that is easy for players to understand and doesn't waste screen space. Even further simplified, have all the player interactable stuff on the bottom and the game on the top. Makes sense to me. So, we see in the game that you have your minikit counter on the upper left, True Jedi tracker on the upper right, and then 3 screen options: far left, free move camera option, thing, whatever. The middle, your party list. The far right is your character customizer. Not to be confused with the custom character. In the Complete Saga, we have our party list on the left, and if you're a Force user, you have this entire area to interact with your Force stuff, meaning instead of pressing and holding the button, you can use the touchscreen instead. If you're a blaster character, this space is blank. Super Mario, you have the world information, how many lives you have, your progress tracker, score counter, coin tracker, and then your item slot. Transformers, you have an objectives tab, POV changer, radar, level tracker, and the transform button. So now we have some reference examples. Let's talk about this. I think what the original trilogy has is okay, but there's some decisions that I don't necessarily understand. I'm fine with the minikit and the True Jedi tracker. That's fine. It's player information, clears up the display, all good. What I don't understand is why the camera and character stuff. The camera doesn't help with the camera issues, and the number of times where you actually need to use it are minimal, if not non-existent. Get rid of it. The character customizer, while I don't particularly see a reason for it, I understand some people enjoy and use it, and it's set up in a way where it's not intrusive, so overall, I'm fine with it. I would have liked to have seen something like in the Complete Saga with the Jedi characters. And I will say, as criticism for that game, I think they should have had something else in the bottom screen to fill that space if you're a blaster character. Because when you're not a Jedi, that screen is completely bare. It's barren. It's empty space. I don't have any great suggestions for what could have gone there, but something is better than nothing. Now moving on to character design. These character models, they're embarrassing. Now obviously you're not going to get the exact same quality in character model graphics, but this looks off to me. Like instead of Lego, I got some cheap knockoff version of Lego. From the pixelation with Leia and Obi-Wan and Luke and the Rebel soldier to the absolute cartoonish design of R2 and 3PO, it all just feels cheap. And just to make sure that it's not an issue with the limitations of the hardware, I played on my 3DS, which is capable of a full Zelda game with 3D graphics. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe holding out a little hope that it might have looked a little sharper at best, but no, just made everything bigger. Now, you could say that it's because of the DS and how limited the hardware is, and that they're trying to render a 3D environment with 3D characters, to which I will say, you know, you might be onto something. But at the same time, I have trouble accepting that it has to look that pixelated to get the quality that they were going for. I mean, hell, even Nintendogs got 3D modeling better. Granted, there's not as much going on, but still, there has to be some kind of middle ground that isn't this. And I have the same criticism for the complete saga, but there's definitely less of it. This is probably pessimistic of me, but I think they were made with as little detail as possible while still attempting to make them recognizable. Here's my reference for how I came to this conclusion. People keep bringing up that it's a DS game. It's this quality because it's a DS game. It looks like this because it's a DS game. I would like to remind you that new Super Mario Bros., Okamaiden, and Bionicle Heroes are also DS games, and somehow managed to handle 3D models and environments without being as heavily pixelated. Talking further about the characters, on the console version they have their own unique postures or idle animations, both with weapons drawn and holstered. Even their attacking animations are unique. In DS original trilogy, the Jedi all have Obi-Wan's jumping and attacking animations, and all the blaster characters have the Stormtrooper attack animation of all characters. And this is a nitpick, but seriously, why is Jango a playable character in this game? It's the original trilogy. If he's classed as an extra, I can let it slide, maybe, but the other game versions don't have him. So why is he here in this one? Also, I love the creative naming of the band members. Level design. On the console throughout the game, it'll be abbreviated obviously, because it's a game adaptation of a movie. But the levels are still recognizable to the source material, that being the films. The levels end in recognizable locations, the escape pod, Obi-Wan's hut, you get the idea. On the DS, not only are the levels just completely redesigned from any recognizable structure compared to the console, the textures and graphical quality are extremely cheap, but we'll cover that more in a bit. And the cutscenes make absolutely zero sense. Let's compare this to the complete saga on the PC and its DS version. This is leagues better. The hub is more recognizable, taking into account that it's scaled down for the DS. The cutscenes are actually the same as the PC version, it's just in a slideshow to accommodate for the DS. And the level design is not only as similar as it can be in a side-scroller format, but the textures don't look as cheap. Which makes me begin to wonder if the developers simply ran out of money to develop the original trilogy. You know, trying not to assume the worst. Now, talking about the levels in their entirety, I really want to know what the thought process was behind these levels. You had two templates. The first was the movie itself. The second was the console version that made the levels recognizable to the movie. For example, here you have secret plans. In the movie, you get the shot of the rebel ship and the Star Destroyer, and learn through its non-verbal and verbal storytelling that Leia had the plans for the Death Star and hid them in R2-D2. In the game, you get the shot of the rebel ship and the Star Destroyer, and have Leia get the plans from the ship's computer. Makes sense. Now you have to go find R2-D2. Also makes sense. Alright, she hid the plans. Now we have to get the droids off the ship, and we end in the escape pod. Fantastic, magical. Here, you have the DS version, Blockade Runner. Similarly named in the Game Boy Advance version, I might add. Here you have Leia talking to a rebel soldier, not Captain Antilles, and Leia sees some laser fire, and he doesn't, and she sees it again, and he doesn't, and oh look, Star Destroyer. And then some stormtroopers are in line, and an officer is walking in front of them, and one of them falls over, because that's funny, I guess. And then we meet up with the droids, and get to the escape pod, and then... well, I'm not exactly sure what this is. Coming back to the Battle of Endor. I want to talk about the part that I mentioned in the gameplay section. See this Ewok? There's two ways to get to him. Either by going from the start point, or by jumping over these platforms and grappling over. Now that we rescued him, there are two ways to leave. You can either go back to the starting area, over on the right, or jump to this swinging log on the left. This is the log that I was having trouble with. Here's my issue. Like I said in the gameplay section, I felt that I should have made the jump from the log to the platform. If the log was only meant to be an exit from the platform, why would you make it so that we can get to that log from the other side if we're not meant to be going that direction? Because then we'll end up doing what I did and waste time trying to do something that is impossible. Because, well, we got to the log, surely we should be able to get to the platform. If you're going to have this log only be an exit, don't let us be able to get to it from the start of the grappling stuff here. Now let's talk about the environment for a moment. The visuals are cheap, as I said, but overall, they are passable for a DS game. Kind of. There are times where the details are about what I expect. And then there's the other times where it looks more simplistic and lazy than the rest. Take this for example. You see these rooms, the floors and the walls, they're fine. And then you see the garbage piles and the water. The water almost looks identical to the sand, it's just darker. Or here, where the floors are reflective. Kind of. Where is that detail up to this point? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about mechanics next, but that will wait for the start of the next video. So I will see you then.